Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 135, Battle against Ushiwaka, Part 1. Great ogres were originally Oni-type monsters with blue skin. It was an evolved ogre. However, great ogres were smaller than typical ogres, they were about the size of a human blessed with good physique. Nonetheless, they were more frightening to fight against. Great ogres were stronger, much more agile, and were skilled with the weapons found in Thousand Sword Peak. Their charisma made them a commanding presence, and their specs were high. They could not use magic or the special skills only ogres could use, but this lack of quirks also meant they could not be used against them. The adventurers facing them would simply have to be stronger or more skilled. However, the monster that currently stood at the top of the mountain was a named monster. Something that evolved even further than the typical great ogre. Its name was Ushiwaka. FSH. Ushiwaka stood up straight, with its arms crossed while staring at the adventurers that had just arrived. It wore what seemed like casual clothing, and had a small one-handed sword hanging from its waist. It looked very much like a warrior, but its most noticeable feature was its shapely face. Behind this stance of awe and beauty, stood 5 great ogres, that seemed to be its loyal vassals. Everyone shuddered when they saw this. This beautiful Oni-type monster was powerful. That monster's wearing clothes. It seems to be a thought garment. High-ranking monsters can use their magic energy to create clothes. Those are most likely resistant against blades. Karen's question was answered by Bond. Oh. You seem very knowledgeable about thought armor. Wuxia was impressed. When survivors reached the top of the mountain, they saw wanderers arrive at about the same time. Really? Never mind that, look. Our focus should be on Ushiwaka or Benkei or something. Said Bond to try to change the subject. The powerful presence of Ushiwaka gave everyone present goosebumps. Humph. Do you think you can beat me with numbers alone? Said Ushiwaka as if spitting it out, before kicking away something near its feet. This. The thing making a rattling noise before reaching the adventurers was a bone. Not only that, it was clearly a human bone. It was a sign that the handsome being in front of them was indeed a monster, and proof that it had eaten someone. All people with no backbone. No, of course they had bones. Ushiwaka tilted its neck at its own words. It seemed less like it was joking and more confused by its expression. It was more like they had weak bones. What about you? Ushiwaka looked at the adventurers, as if appraising them. And then. Wuxia. What is it, Nick? Let's call a truce. That's very much not on the same level as a great ogre. I agree. It will trounce us unless we forget about the match. This isn't what they told us. This thing should be dealt with by high-ranking adventurers. A tense atmosphere spread. Suffice to say, the sheer pressure coming from Ushiwaka made them all forget about the match. The Adventurer Guild greatly underestimated it. Bond, Sem. If it becomes necessary, do that. Bond and Sem nodded, and Ushiwaka looked on, seemingly bored. Hey, are you done talking? Come closer and I'll eat you up nicely. Do you have anything else? Anything else? Like clothes and armor. If they belong to adventurers from the Labyrinth City, they should have their owners' names sewn on. If they had families, I'd like to take their stuff back to them. As it heard Nick's words, Ushiwaka quietly snickered, before laughing loudly. Kahaha. Do you think you will return alive after coming here? You fool. Well, you see. Life always has such shameful moments, don't you think? You are rude. But you sure look tasty. Ushiwaka let out an angry roar, signaling the start of the battle. Its movements were beautiful to the point where the adventurers thought they looked like they were dancing. It smoothly unsheathed a one-handed sword, raised it to the sky, and lightly stepped forward. Guh. Nick blocked Ushiwaka's sword. "Nu. This feels strange. You're heavier than you look. Who knows? Am I?" As he blocked the sword, Nick kicked the monster. Tch. The unexpected pressure made Ushiwaka step back. It was less that it was overwhelmed, and more that the strange feeling it had when it attacked Nick made it wary. Humph. Humans use strange techniques. I have to say I'm impressed. Then, why not surrender? I didn't spare the humans that begged for mercy. I'm sure other monsters are like that too, so do the same if you can. At that moment, Ushiwaka suddenly got another sword from somewhere and now wielded two. The monster attacked Nick with the same speed and intensity as its previous attack. Nick defended himself with a short sword, but it was quickly chipped and was quickly being worn down. So you can deal with two swords too. What was that? Where did you get? Who knows? I'll tell you my trick if you tell me yours. No chance. Nick dropped away the short sword. Or at least he pretended to, and kicked it as it fell. This caught Ushiwaka off guard, and it made no attempt to dodge as the sword slashed its cheek. Blood started running down its cheek. Ushiwaka wiped it and stared at its hand. I've never been attacked like that. I've never kicked a dagger from the front either. Don't play with me. The monster's beautiful face was painted with anger, and the air around it seemed to spark. Nick prepared himself for the fierce attack that was sure to come. Still, he did not feel as much pressure as he did in a recent fight. This was not like the time he faced White Mask, and Nick told himself he could handle it. No, it's my fault for standing still to see what would happen. Contrary to what Nick expected, Ushiwaka let out a sigh of disappointment. It twisted its neck and shoulders, and relaxed its joints. Don't you hate me? I feel enmity in a sense of duty as a monster, but I don't know about hate. It's our first meeting and I underestimated you. It's the same for you, right? Nick felt there was some humanity to it. Still, he did not go as far as to think it could be reasoned with. There was no point in trying to negotiate with a monster and try to get it to stop killing people. Being able to control the emotions welling from its heart and remaining cool was a type of strength, and a sign of how menacing it was. I wish we could keep grappling a bit more, but this is not a meeting between two young girls. Let's show what we have with no regrets. Ushiwaka wiped blood off his face and painted its lips with it. Its alluring smile made a chill run down Nick's spine. However, it was about to show something even stranger. As Ushiwaka adjusted its face and hair, a third and fourth arm rose from its back, holding swords. So that's how you did it. It's not bad for sneak attacks, but if my opponent somehow senses them, it could be used against me. The great ogres ran up to Ushiwaka and politely handed it swords. The imposing sight of Ushiwaka holding 4 swords was clearly on a different level than what adventurers usually faced. Nick took out a sword he had hidden in his pocket, and braced himself. Sha! Yo! A series of violently vigorous attacks began. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 136, Battle against Ushiwaka, Part 2. At this point, Nick could not counterattack, and focused solely on dodging. What's wrong? Where's the vigor from before? Is that all you've got? Coo. Don't let yourself get bewildered. As Nick fell into a predicament, he remembered his master's words. Sure, he was caught off guard by the monster suddenly growing extra arms, but it was not like this was a unique situation. C-rank labyrinths had Oni-type monsters with more than 2 arms, and golems as well. While they were both strong enemies, Nick's master always remained calm as he dealt with them. Those things were certainly not invincible, even if their range of attack and number of simultaneous attacks increased. But it only has 2 eyes and 1 head. The number of fingers holding swords increased by 10, but the range of motion of its elbows and shoulders is narrower. It's stronger, but weaker in other ways. Nick looked at Ushiwaka with calm eyes as it attacked him. He dodged slashes, evaded thrusts, and took advantage of the very small window of opportunity he had to aim for its outstretched arms. Nick's exquisite and persistent moves amazed even Ushiwaka. Interesting. You're coming at me with no fear. Shut up. I'm out of breath. No matter how much Nick attacked when Ushiwaka was vulnerable, the monster's stamina and number of attacks pushed him back. Nick's problem was that he could not bring it down. He became stronger after learning stepping, but he now felt all too well that this was not enough to defeat a real powerful monster like the one he was facing. How did she defeat White Mask? You must be feeling pretty good to be talking to yourself like that. But are you sure you're fine like this? Can I have some time to talk? Fine. Nick let out a surprised voice. If you think you can win, go for it. I don't know why those people are just standing back there to begin with. You can come at me anytime you want. Ushiwaka sounded puzzled, but survivors were the ones most confused. Such a rational monster was a very rare sight. That is true. Why did this turn into a one-on-one duel? Asked Bellocchio, who feigned ignorance to Ushiwaka. As the monster saw this, it giggled. Because I was interested. Humph, talking to humans is fun. My subordinates are too thick-headed to understand the subtleties of conversation. Regular monsters are like that. Nick let out an exasperated sigh. Bellocchio, can you not pretend you didn't choose to sit back? My apologies, I thought a wait-and-see approach was the most appropriate. The monster's minions also show no signs of moving. I can tell them to move if you want. That won't be necessary. Usually there is only one great ogre here. How much higher are you trying to raise the hurdle? I see, so you conquered this labyrinth before. If that's the case, I have no choice but to let my henchmen vent their frustration. Looks like we stirred up the hornet's nest. Go. Following Ushiwaka's command, the great ogres sitting back all stood up at once. The great ogres attacked the adventurers. Ogres were not only intelligent but also had great fighting instincts, and were in a place where weapons were abundant. They picked up long swords and spears, which were probably brought there by them in the first place. Dara. Both vanguards clashed. Karen, Bond, and Marcus worked well enough together that one would not think it was the first time. The great ogres had more physical strength and a numbers advantage, and Karen and the others were put on the back foot by their vicious attacks. They were also not used to the weapons they were using. They did a good enough job withstanding their attacks, but that would not be enough. They had to win, and win as a team. Suisen, take. Leave it to me. Suisen took a weapon from Bellocchio, a spear infused with magic energy. A flash of light could be seen coming from the tip. She previously used it as a throwing spear, but not this time. You. Suisen thrust the spear forward, penetrating a great globen. The moment this happened, it created a great explosion. Gaha. As the after effects of the explosion died down, a great ogre could be seen far away with a hole in its chest. A chakram fired by Tiana hit a great globen that was taken aback, and Willie used magic blade to put another in check. Is that enough venting? Nick pointed at the great ogres that were now being pushed back, while frantically evading Ushiwaka's attacks. It was meant to be a light provocation. Not bad. But his opponent did not seem to be the least bit shaken. Nick even felt that this compliment was not sarcastic. You look like you think you can take us on your own. As far as fighting power goes, yes, but those are my stupid and weak, but cute little brothers. I can't bear to just watch them get taken down. Now, said Ushiwaka as it raised one hand. Retreat. These words prompted the great ogres to go into formation. 5 charged forward while huddled together, with more behind them. Suisen and Karen were knocked down, unable to withstand this sudden charge. Everyone thought it couldn't be true. Ha ha ha. I wanted to play a little more too, sorry. W8. Hey. No way. Ushiwaka showed its incredible jumping ability by jumping high above both parties' heads. It was clearly an unusual situation. Monsters would never run away from humans, as their instinct was to attack humans. In fact, they felt it more intensely than humans and other species felt the need to eat or sleep. This is bad. Ushiwaka is focusing more on preserving the fighting power of the group than winning the battle in front of it. It probably has plans to gather them outside the labyrinth. Bellocchio said with a more sullen expression than he had ever shown so far. So. Stampede? No doubt about it. Bellocchio plainly answered Nick's question. A stamp was the name given to when monsters left a labyrinth and acted as a group. Obviously, they were after people. Not food or water, they simply wanted to fight and kill. The labyrinth city would be able to defend against such a threat, but smaller villages would literally turn into scorched earth. After them. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 137, Battle against Ushiwaka, Part 3. A great ogre running down the mountain was pierced by a spear. Yes. Suisen threw this spear with so much force, it seemed to have been fired from a catapult fixed to a castle's wall. Moreover, it looked as though an explosion occurred where the great ogre was hit, thanks to the magic infused in the tip being released. Still, the pace of the monsters led by Ushiwaka did not ease up, and they continued running down the mountain. Nick. Suisen and I will target them from here. Alright, we'll keep going after them. Cover us. The mountain path was not a straight line. It zigzagged as it ran down the gentle slope of the mountain. Since the path from the top to around the halfway point was sparsely dotted with trees, it was not hard to aim from above. However, the monster's speed was higher than expected, no doubt due to the fact that they knew the area like the palm of their hands. Nick and the others felt uneasy. I hope Wilma realizes. I don't think someone her age can do much about that swarm. Tiana answered Nick's grumble. I think she can at least hold them back. She used to be a rank A adventurer. Really? Then. But we can't relax. Nick warned Tiana as she seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. There's only one path from here to the halfway point, but there are probably more paths that only monsters can use, and they might use them to get to places where people live. And the closer we get to the bottom, the more options they have. Ah, I see. They're not human, so they don't have to use the same routes humans do. It'd be good if we can settle this before they could get past the halfway point, but this really looks bad. Nick then glanced at Karen and Bond. Do you want to do that? Are you serious? Karen and Bond knew what Nick was thinking, and raised questions. Yes, throw a spear like Suisen. I'll hang on to it and fly, and take Bond with me while I'm at it. Is that going to go well? Your aim doesn't have to be perfect if you're throwing it from here. It'll hit an incline somewhere. I'm not falling off a cliff. Why yes. Wait. I do not remember agreeing with this plan. Just give it up. Nick grabbed Bond by the back of the neck, who quietly rolled into a ball. Oh, all right. At times like these I feel like you really have a screw loose. Whatever. Let's go. Karen grabbed the biggest spear she could find, and held it like Suisen. Nick held on tight close to its tip. It feels weird how it's so light even with two people hanging from it. Even with light body, our combined weight is something like 30 kilograms. It's not that light. Yes, but it looks so much heavier. Forget it. Here it goes. Karen let out a sigh of resignation and threw the spear as hard as she could, sending Nick and Bond flying. This really is scary. Shut up or you'll bite your tongue. The spear's trajectory was more accurate than they expected. It went straight after Ushiwaka's back, not the great ogre's. Wah! What are you doing? Who are you talking to? The spear did not penetrate Ushiwaka's body, but it was unable to dodge it, and had to sacrifice one of its arms. Nick felt relieved that it caused substantial damage. Still, this stunt did not leave Nick and Bond unscathed. It would be strange if it did not cause them at least some damage. Nick felt as though he was about to faint, and Bond's exquisite sword skills kept the great ogres at bay. Idiot! Recover quickly. Ouch! Give me 30 seconds. I need to compose my breathing. I told you this was crazy. It's fine. It's fine. You can do it. Alright. Bond used his special parallel skill. No. The real value of Ushiwaka's multiple arms was in a defensive position. Its vigorous attacks were menacing, but the monster still had only one body. Its attacks could be evaded by taking some distance, and it was not all that difficult to target its arms when it would stretch them to attack. However, it was a lot of trouble once it focused entirely on defense. Nick would be unable to penetrate its defense on his own. But the way to break through it was simple, sheer numbers. Soraya. This way. Your second flank is wide open from above. Bond split himself in three and surrounded Ushiwaka. He would keep himself just outside of the monster's reach, and swing his sword at the slightest movement. Ushiwaka's arms became covered in small cuts, and the situation turned into a deadlock. Don't underestimate me. Gua! Ushiwaka shouted and pierced the ground with its sword, creating a fierce blast. No! This really is too much. The two copies disappeared, and only the original Bond remained. It's all right. Turn into a sword. Yes. Bond backed away with a somersault, and with a bright shine returned to his sacred sword form. I see, a magic sword. A sacred sword with a name. I don't like chit-chat as much as you. Nick brandished the sword of Bond's. Then I won't respond. Oh. Ushiwaka's upper body seemingly expanded, and it let out a terrifying roar. It went beyond hurting Nick's head and ears. The impact made his entire body numb. Sorry, but I'm at a disadvantage if people like you come at me. Let's play some more after I improve a little. Coo. Ushiwaka's arms stretched like an octopus. It grabbed swords and spears off the ground and threw them at Nick. This is payback for earlier. Nick expected a spear to strike Ushiwaka in the back. But no such attack came. Coo. What is this? Bellocchio and Suason were keeping their enemies in check, but were now too busy defending themselves. Not only that, but great ogres also started to throw weapons. What is that? Nick saw another unfavorable situation occurring. He noticed that the monsters were not running out of spears, and once he looked closer, he saw them growing almost instantly below Ushiwaka's feet. It was as though time was moving faster. That is the magic characteristic of demons. It is probably interfering with the function of the labyrinth itself. Magic isn't supposed to work here. That applies to us invaders, probably not to its ruler. Damn it. Ushiwaka slowly retreated while throwing spears. If it kept buying time in this manner, it would surely escape. Nick then fell into a trap, as he started thinking about the situation in the long term and failed to pay attention to the battle in front of him. Don't look away, idiot. Karen stepped in and saved Nick from a spear headed his way. Karen. Good timing. Nick noticed Karen was covered in wounds. He figured she must have relied on her robust body to make a mad dash towards him. Ah. Ah. There was blood dripping from several places. Nick wanted to thank her and let her rest, but had to push through those feelings. Sorry. Can you follow me a bit longer? Yes. There was no need to explain what he was thinking. The guard on the sword of Bonds shined brightly. Union. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 138, Battle against Ushiwaka, Part 4. A dazzling light surrounded Nick and Karen, so intense that no one could look directly at it. When it subsided, the two people it had enveloped were gone, and in their place stood what appeared to be a dragon person. What is this? Ushiwaka said in shock as it looked at Nick/Karen. Silver armor that shined beautifully. A virile but somewhat feminine appearance. And above all else, immense magic energy hidden inside. Everyone present, monsters and people, could feel their beauty, and shuddered at their tremendous strength. We can't afford to hold anything back anymore. It's time to get serious, said Nick/Karen as they picked up a rock and flung it with their thumb. It traveled in a straight line and carried killing intent, before hitting and ripping one of the great ogre's ears. Gwa! This doesn't look like the kind of situation where I can show you my back anymore. That's right. Ushiwaka was right, as the great ogres were shrinking away in fear. Nick/Karen were still just warming up, and could easily do more than just destroy their ears. They knew very well that if they turned around and ran, their heads or hearts would be pierced next. But you're going against the rules of this labyrinth. That's magic, isn't it? Apparently Union isn't treated like offensive magic, so that's good news for us. And who are you to talk? Why can you bring out as many weapons as you want? Said Nick/Karen with an exasperated tone, and Ushiwaka sneered. Humph, tell that to whoever made this labyrinth. So how about we both stop complaining? Yeah, the time for jokes is over. I'll get serious too. Ushiwaka stretched out what remained of the arm that had been torn off, and it regenerated after a while. Meanwhile, two more arms sprout out. It bent and stretched the joints of its 6 arms to test them, and started muttering a spell while making a sign with its lowest arm. Dungeon control, Oni sword summon. 6 black swords appeared near the monster, with an odd black luster. They seemed almost like they were alive, and their shine was strangely slimy looking. Bond, what's that? Probably magic related to the labyrinth, not unlike the magic used by White Mask. Is that what it was? Remember that magic to increase weight absurdly? If that is magic to create a labyrinth out of nowhere, this is magic to control a pre-existing labyrinth. It is accessing the labyrinth's functions to create swords that suits its convenience. That's not fair. Mumbled Nick/Karen, to which Ushiwaka grinned. Good thing we're in the sky path. I can bring out the weapons I want, no problem. HN. Does that mean you can't do that normally? I have to follow some rules of the labyrinth. It'd be a different story if I could create labyrinths. Are you sure you want to stand around and chat like this? You're right. Let's move somewhere else. Neither of us wants to end this via a ring outright. Nick/Karen spread their arms. Just under their eyes was the menacing mountain surface. Ushiwaka and the great ogres could easily run down the mountain, but no one could tell what would happen as this clash intensified. Up until this point, the monsters had the advantage of knowing all about this place, but the arrival of Nick/Karen created doubt within Ushiwaka. Agreed, let's move. Follow me. They moved to the 6th point, where the sword mantis pair stood before. It was a wide area, and it was not likely that any accidents would occur no matter how they moved. Nick/Karen and Ushiwaka faced each other from a distance, as if a martial arts contest was about to begin. This has certainly turned into something strange. Master? What is it, Tiana? You look like you're enjoying yourself. Bellocchio could not hide his excitement, and seemed happy. I was not expecting to come across such an irregular situation. Well, I understand. Can you please try to keep quiet about this? Said Tiana with a complicated expression, and Bellocchio nodded with a light smile. Of course, but not just because it is related to you. High-rank adventurers tend to have some sort of trump card, and no one would be friends with someone that casually exposes it. It is a kind of courtesy and worldly wisdom. Are there actually a lot of adventurers that can do this sort of thing? Of course not. Only S-rank adventurers can use such a powerful ancient technique. Like Fifth. I hear that name a lot, but is he really that strong? He just sounds like a glutton. Hey you two. I don't know if you're chatting or having a lecture, but can you leave it at that? Said Suisen with an exasperated expression. Tiana quickly shut up and focused on the two about to start their bout. Let's go. Nick/Karen raised the sword of bonds, and Ushiwaka closed the distance between them. A series of sword strikes were unleashed like a storm, which Nick/Karen calmly blocked with minimal movement. Ja. Nick/Karen swung the sword sideways, which to the people watching seemed as though it could cut through air and empty space. Ah. The bones on my back are trembling. I'm glad I can even breathe right now. Is this what fear is like? Said Ushiwaka as it took deep breaths, after taking some distance. That's right. Interesting. Ushiwaka charged forward again, but this time, kicked something. What cheap trick? You've been using a lot of cheap tricks yourself. What was kicked towards Nick/Karen was the arm of a sword mantis. This sharp blade flew in a straight line towards Nick/Karen's neck. After Nick/Karen smacked it down, they found themselves being attacked from all directions by swords. Ushiwaka's 6 arms unleashed slashes that could not be replicated by any human. All of them had perfect timing, and it would be impossible to block them with just one sword. Got you. Said Ushiwaka with a gleeful expression. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 139, Shameless Sword, Part 1. Ushiwaka defeated Nick/Karen for good. Or so it thought. Sorry. Ushiwaka suddenly realized the sword of bonds had slashed it from the waist to the flank. The raging flames surging from the sword created a quiet, brutal, and decisive flash. The upper body that was now separated from the rest, hit the ground. Why? Mumbled Ushiwaka, who would soon breathe its last breath. Can I say it? Yes, tell me. You were simply outmatched. No matter what shape-shifting tricks you pull, it doesn't matter if I can see and predict your attacks. In fact, the way you relied entirely on your body made things easier for us. So, what should I have done? Well. You evolved fairly recently, so you wanted to see what you could do. You knew you should have kept running but got greedy, didn't you? Of course I did. Yes, it couldn't be helped. But I think a more experienced monster would have been more patient. So I'm just a kid. For a monster, yes. But. Do you think holding back was an option in this situation? No way. So, in the end it wasn't just a joke. I could only really act like a monster for a bit. Said Ushiwaka with a laugh, before its face became blank. Its eyes were no longer looking at Nick/Karen, or anything else for that matter. I have one final request. What? Well. Nick/Karen suddenly sensed movement behind them, but it was too late. What? Turns out you're just kids too, getting so careless when you're facing monsters. We're both too self-conceited. Ushiwaka's lower body ran towards Nick/Karen, and wrapped around their body like an octopus. Now. The great ogres charged furiously at Nick/Karen, but that also was a foregone conclusion. Gah! Guh! Bellocchio seemed to have just been watching, but in reality he had already infused several spears and swords with magic. These were thrown by Suisen with the force of a cannon, and the great ogres quickly went down one after the other. Tiana also set a chakram in her magic bow, and the others also moved towards stopping this final charge. Oh. Oh. So this is defeat. Mumbled Ushiwaka, before breathing its true last breath. What a weird guy. The union spell was undone, and Nick, Karen, and Bond returned to their regular bodies. After offering a prayer, everyone started collecting materials. The magic energy that remained was very strong, on par with a boss from A, B, or a rank labyrinth. In addition to the reward, trading in these materials would bring them a lot of money. Usually at the end of an adventure, Nick would feel happy about getting to spend his money on tickets to live events and merchandise, but this time, he felt strangely emotional. He did not feel like he had just eliminated a regular beast or monster. It felt rather refreshed and lonely at the same time. It was as though he just had a match with a pure martial artist. Now that I think about it, we were able to use union normally. Doesn't that count as magic? I do not know about regular magic swords, but this barrier is not enough to hold down a sacred sword such as myself. One of the things they had in mind while making me was blowing away these crafty little barriers. Ah, yes. You did say something about that. A sacred sword? I see, now it makes sense. Interjected Bellocchio. Well, a lot happened. Do you want to hear about it? Of course, but... How about we return first? I am starting to get hungry. Said Bellocchio, to which Nick smiled and nodded. I'm really tired as well. This is not worth the 2 million, even adding the money from the materials. Should we try to negotiate for a little more? Of course. Let's squeeze all we can from them. The monsters were quiet after their boss went down. Even the paths that were dangerous were safe on the way down. Even if monsters did appear, they would be small fry that appeared after the sword mantis area. The only dangers were tripping or catching a cold due to their bodies losing heat. Nick's survivors and Bellocchio's wanderers were all adventurers, and yet, at this moment, they were careless. And someone took advantage of this opportunity. I'll have your life. But it was not a monster. It was clearly a man. This man most likely hid behind rocks, and got surprisingly close. He wore clothes from the country known as Nozomi. He had a long face and black hair, although a little different than Nick's. His katana was already unsheathed, and he was already very close by the time Nick noticed him. Garasso. It was a member of all martial arts. Nick's former partner, Argus pupil, and katana user, Garasso. He was suspected of killing a knight. Why was he acting so suspiciously in a place like this? The answer was obvious. Nick suddenly understood everything, and realized Garasso really was working as an assassin. He also thought he was an idiot. The target was obviously Bellocchio. However, even if he could not use magic, Bellocchio would surely not go down to a broad downward swing. He could dodge such close-range attacks, and had his partners with him. Even now, Sueson moved to block Garasso's path without hesitation. After getting so close, he really should have attacked from behind. However, Garasso sidestepped Sueson with strange moves. It was as though he was ignoring gravity. He was using stepping. Not only that, but he was much more skilled than Nick. Garasso's movements seemed as hard to grasp as mist, and he stopped in front of Bellocchio. Who are you? Bellocchio blocked Garasso's slash. Luckily, he was cautious and had a sword hidden in his pocket. The shrill sound of metal hitting metal echoed. Or at least it should have. It was certainly what everyone present heard, and not the sound of flesh being cut. Guh. One down. But Bellocchio was cut. Although he had blocked the slash from the front, blood spewed from his back. Ah. This old man was the one I was worried about, so now I can move on to the main job. Garasso. What the hell are you? Nick grabbed a short sword and rushed towards Garasso. What am I doing? Did Argus teach you to ask questions when someone attacks you? Shut up. Garasso pointed his katana at Nick. Something instinctual, almost animal-like told Nick he should not fight him. What did Garasso just do? Nick was sure Bellocchio blocked that attack, so there was surely a trick behind it. All Nick could do was stop him without touching the sword. At that moment, Nick decided to put him in check with his bare hands. "You're a better fighter than me, but my stepping is better." Wah! Nick tried to entangle Garaso like a snake, but the moment he was about to touch his body, he was flicked away. Nick remembered this impact, and it was then. Sorry Nick. Nick just barely evaded Garaso's killing slash, but the silent kick that followed it carried a lot of force. Wah-yeah! Nick's body was knocked off the mountain path, and plummeted from a considerable height. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 140, Shameless Sword, Part 2. Nick! Screamed Sem. Everyone was thrown into a panic by this sudden development. Bellocchio was slashed, and Nick plummeted down the mountain. Both parties lost their leader in what felt like a second. Now you've done it. The first one to recover and take action was Karen. Although she was feeling the exhaustion that came with using Union, she ran to close the distance between herself and Garaso. Ah, damn it. That Nick. What kind of party did he put together? Garaso dodged Karen, but her fierce attacks continued. All of her attacks had deadly power, and Garaso seemed to want to avoid an exchange of blows. Marcus. Let's go. Got it. Marcus and Willie moved to support Karen and block Garaso's escape. I am going to Nick. Someone accompany me. Said Bond, and Sem looked around, trying to decide what he should do. Every second counted, and he soon came to a conclusion. Tiana, be on guard. He might not be acting alone. Swayson. Take care of Nick. I wonder if he's alright. He fell off the mountain, but he's probably hanging on somewhere. It's Nick we're talking about, so I'm sure he is. Sem gave instructions as he ran towards Bellocchio. Swayson hesitated as she looked at a downed Bellocchio, but soon realized there was no time for that. Dragon Girl. Come with me. Alright. I'm leaving Mr. Bellocchio with you. And we're leaving Nick to you. Tiana held her magic bow and looked around. Sem reached Bellocchio and checked to see if he was breathing, conscious, and the state of his wound. Guh. I am fine. I won't die. Don't talk. This is a serious wound. Sem said to a pale-looking Bellocchio. Every moment counted, and Sem focused all of his attention on healing. Karen had a bad habit. She would say she understood things even if she understood them poorly. Ever since she was a child, her parents told her to always answer loudly and clearly, as nothing was more righteous than vigor and energy. Because of this, she would often instinctively say, I understand. Nick somehow sensed this, and told her time and time again to make sure to always say when she did not understand something. He would also compliment her when she asked questions and understood things properly. He would sometimes make fun of her, but never insulted her for doing a poor job. Sem and Tiana also respected the way Nick taught. Karen started thinking more deeply. When she started understanding things better and coming up with her own answers, her usual intensity lessened, and a calmness was born in her heart. Don't you have to go save your leader? Is revenge more important? You dragon people really are just animals. Poor Nick. Garaso snickered at Karen, who rather than yell back quietly looked deep into his eyes. If I try to help him, you'll attack me. You're a bad hunter if all you wanted was to kill Nick and Bellocchio. Why didn't you attack when they were alone? Although Garaso acted like he wanted to get away, he could not hide his bloodlust. He was clearly looking for an opening. He was also trying to use the opening after he kicked Nick down. It was not simple malice, it was a deliberate provocation. This provocation was not unsuccessful, rather, it made Karen burn with rage, but the question was where she would direct that anger, and how she would use it. Her number one priority was to save Nick, but for that, she would have to first kill the man in front of her. She would have to take him down as fast as possible, so as not to put the people going after Nick in danger. Karen decided that was where she would direct her anger. Controlling your emotions isn't about holding back, it's about deciding for yourself when to release them. Something clicked inside her mind. All this time, when Karen fought monsters and other enemies, she simply repeated what she learned from her father. She swung her sword, took down monsters, and even used her special technique, Fire Dragon Slash, just like how she was taught. This did not change after she was betrayed by White Hellon. After being faced with the malice of others, and learning how scary people could be, she became very distrustful. But after meeting Nick and the others, this distrust evolved into caution. Still, her fighting style remained the same. However, after adventuring as part of survivors, performing various jobs, and being put into this situation where Nick could very well be dead, something changed. Shah. Karen unleashed vicious attacks, but not wide, powerful attacks meant to be one-hit kills. She aimed carefully with her word and attacked in a quieter, more compact manner. She also stopped blocking her opponent's attacks and dodged them instead. Are you losing your nerve? You can't cut anything without swinging a sword. I guess. You had to get close and slash to cut Bellocchio's back. That means you didn't use a wind spell to make wind blades or anything like that. Bellocchio was cut because he blocked you, wasn't he? There was a clear reaction from Garasso. He took some distance and his grin faded away. The acting mask he had on was taken off. Correct. Sword technique, shameless sword. An assassination skill that makes it so when two swords clash, a continuation slash occurs. What a terrible technique. The pinnacle of cowardice. Who are you to talk? It's terrible but it's strong. It's still very useful even after its trick has been revealed. For example, Garasso sheathed his katana, and Karen jumped to the side with all she had. A sharp wind blew past where Karen was standing, and a little bit of her hair was cut and fell to the ground. Did you hear about it from Nick? However, a long-range slash, one of Garasso's special techniques. Karen barely remembered it, but she had the vague idea that Nick told her about this at some point. He would picture what the opponent wanted to do, and simply follow along with it. The point was not to make the opponent dodge and take distance, but rather put them in a position where they would have no choice but to move. The attack that followed would be the real one. Too slow. Wah. Garasso was waiting where Karen landed, and slashed downwards from the shoulder, but Karen anticipated this and broke through the attack. Her attack was faster, sharper, and heavier than his, and knocked him back. Gah. Bah. Is that your animalistic strength? Karen swung her sword just before their swords could be locked together, making Garasso's slash much shallower. It cut through the back of Karen's jacket and a layer of skin, making her bleed, but failed to reach her muscles and bones. So this is what happens when you can't take a full swing. You knew. And still did it. Secret sword technique, shameless sword. An assassination skill that produced a continuation slash. People that were ignorant of it would get their backs slashed, and people familiar with it would be forced into defending and dodge, until eventually also getting slashed. No matter the situation, it was a powerful technique that gave its user the initiative. However, to someone with strong enough resolve, who cared little if their back was cut and would not hesitate to sacrifice themselves for an attack, it was nothing more than an average technique. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 141, Vertical Limit. While Karen and the others fought Garasso. Yuwa. Nick fell down the mountain after being kicked. He instinctively reached out with his right hand, and almost reached the rock wall. Nick was kicked down an incline of over 70 degrees, which meant it would be near impossible to climb it without driving wedges into the wall and hooking a rope. If he was to be saved, he would have to hit the mountain rock slope a little further down. At least he would not be hitting the ground at an altitude of close to 1,000 meters and dying instantly. If Nick's angle was not perpendicular and there was overhang, he would be thrown completely in the air. But even if he did hit a slope on the way down, the impact would surely destroy bones and organs. And then he would continue falling, and by the second or third time, he would certainly die. Even if he somehow managed to hang on, he would be in bad shape. This was all very clear to Nick, who became ready to face death, but was unable to resign himself to his fate. He had no intention to let himself be crushed like a bug after being betrayed by his former partner and kicked down. Still, fate was uncaring. He could feel his entrails rising, the air pressure made his ears hurt, and he was losing sense of what was up or down, left or right. A sharp wall of rock rapidly approached, meaning he would die in about 10 seconds. And no way. He twisted his body and focused all his nerves on stretching his arm, before using light body and sticking a knife into the wall. Why yes. Yes. The knife just happened to hit a soft surface, and slid down while sticking to the wall. What saved Nick was the fact that the knife hit soft soil. This combined with light body making him less heavy, meant his own weight would not break or rip off his arm. He did not stop right away, but this did act as brakes, slowing down his descent. Nick felt ecstatic about being saved, but his hopes were soon betrayed. The knife hit hard bedrock and broke, leaving Nick falling once again. Gay. The speed of his descent was heavily reduced, but he did not expect the misfortune that would fall on him next. His body was now rotating like a chess piece. It was like a ball that had bounced off the ground. Damn it. What now? What do I do? Nick's vision became blurry, and he was unable to control his body. Since light body was making his body spin, should he reverse it and use heavy body? Nick knew this was a bad idea. Making his body heavier would only make the impact that much greater when he hit a surface. He was falling much slower than before, and he did not want to lose this advantage. If he did nothing but continue maintaining light body and hit the ground, he still had a small chance to survive. He would have to make a decision soon. I have to stop spinning. All he could do was twist his body, but stopping his body from spinning without any sort of footing would be impossible. His vision gradually got darker. The centrifugal force was damaging his blood flow and semicircular canals. It would not be long before he lost consciousness. If I can't move, then magic. Nick acted on what was basically animal instincts. He activated both light body and heavy body at the same time and shifted his center of gravity. His body rotated sharply in the opposite direction. GUH. While bearing the pressure that felt as though it was ripping him apart, Nick stopped rotation and got complete control of his position. He was still falling, but at least he could control his limbs and the direction he was facing. And then, he kicked the wall. You. He kicked himself upwards, and kicked the wall again. Like a deer climbing a cliff, Nick lightly jumped up. What is this? How is this so stable? If his balance was off by a little bit, he would plummet, but Nick stopped thinking too deeply. He could not afford to, and left it all up to his body and instincts. 10 more kicks and he would reach a gentler slope. If he hesitated for a second, death would be waiting. If he could not gain enough height to reach the next place he could jump from, or if he stepped on a brittle spot, he would fall again. He was still in a precarious state. All right. After the 5th or 6th jump, Nick was getting close. That conviction proved to be fatal, however, as he stepped through brittle ground on the next jump and found himself falling again. He figured he could start jumping again, but the worst possible thing happened. Rocks started falling. Ah! There was no way out of it this time. As he was facing death, Nick spent more energy than he would normally. This added to the exhaustion that came with using Union, meant Nick was left with no energy or stamina left. He resigned himself in as he fell. Well, I did well. I really struggled with all I had. No. It's not over. A clear voice reached Nick's ears, and he was suddenly carried by an intense force on his side. Wah! Ah! Nick was being carried by a woman who stood perpendicular to the wall and ran on its side with incredible speed. Alright. Wait. Are you alright? Are you hurt? The woman stopped on a rock surface large enough for them to stand on, and gently put Nick down. Alice? Nick was saved by a beautiful woman with short blue hair. She was the commander of one of the Order of the Sun's units, who started investigating Nick after the incident with White Mask. That was close. You better be thankful. Oh, of course. Nick was at a loss for words as he nodded at Alice. Did no one ever tell you not to stare at an adult woman's face? Said Alice with an awkward smile, but Nick simply continued staring. Hey, are you really entranced or something? S. Sorry. Alice. I'm at my limit. Are you actually serious? Oh. All the pressure that was placed on Nick's body caught up with him now that the tension was gone. The intense fatigue, the pain on his joints, all the small wounds all over his body, and all the shaking his semicircular canals and brain had gone through. It all resulted in him vomiting profusely. Wuxia. Don't do that in this tight space. No. My mantle. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 142, White Mask Returns, Part 1. That was awful. It was awful for me. Alice yelled at a sickly-looking Nick. Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. And you know. Thank you very much. I feel like a goddess or an angel came for me. Really? Nick said so sincerely, since Alice had just saved his life in the nick of time. He was not complimenting her for her beauty or anything, but Alice was a little embarrassed. Nick felt as though she would be easily fooled by a bad guy. More importantly, why are you? I don't even have to ask, you're here after Garasso, right? That's right. Alice nodded. Attacking from the front but cutting the back. It's that technique. It's an assassin's skill. I can't deny that. What Nick saw matched what he heard from Alice before. He thought Garasso could very well have slaughtered Alice's colleague from the back, and he was not interested in covering for him anymore. Is that a technique of all martial arts? Although she looked embarrassed before, Alice now looked at Nick with very sharp eyes. I don't know, I've never seen it before. It's not like I know everything about all martial arts either. I don't even know why he attacked us. Well, we can talk about that later, I should get going. Oh, and take my mantle and give it back after you've washed it. Alice stood up and winked, before setting foot on the rock wall. She then stood on it as if gravity had flipped 90 degrees. W8. Take me with you. No. Alice looked as though she was pondering it, before refusing with a cheerful smile. This is the safest place right now. I'll come back for you later. You're kidding. But Alice simply smiled, and Nick realized she was serious. Do you want to leave? Of course. I can't just sit here. Then, don't rely on me and leave on your own. I like kids that try their hardest like you were doing before, but not spoiled babies. Like before. A thought suddenly popped into Nick's head. How was he saved from falling? Alice saved him just in time, but he was almost there. He was moving as though he was being sucked into the wall. Give me a hint, Alice. What? You ran on the wall, but it wasn't because of some magic item or something special about your body. It was some sort of technique, right? You're asking for a hint, but you've pretty much got it figured out. Alice giggled. She was actually complimenting him, and not being sarcastic. I see. Good luck. I think you can do it. Alice waved her hand as she walked on the wall one step at a time, as if she was purposefully showing it to Nick. All right. Nick composed his breathing. His joints hurt, he was full of scratches, and due to the position he was in, his left elbow and right knee were throbbing with pain. He felt as though he would not clear his head unless he threw up again. Still, he started moving his limbs, and slapped his cheeks to motivate himself. Nick thought back to when he was in a trance. He activated both heavy body and light body at the same time to control his position when his body was spinning. No, I didn't hold back the rotation, I rotated in the opposite direction. Many things started connecting in Nick's mind. Alice walked on the wall, much like he saw Olivia do before. No, Olivia did more than just walk on the wall, she flicked him away just by touching his cheek. The strong impact that Nick received was as though something rotating at a very high speed touched a chess piece. Heavy body. Light body. Although he was not moving, a gyration was generated in his body, as though he was becoming a spinning top. Yo, watch out. The sudden increase in speed made Nick lose his balance and almost fall. One false move would send him falling down the mountain again, and yet a smile started forming on Nick's face. I see, that's what it is. You could have just told me about this pain in the ass technique. Nick composed his breathing again, and started activating his magic. After being sent flying by Karen again, Garasso started mumbling while still on the floor. The grandfather of my grandfather's grandfather had a pretty high status in society. I heard he was something called a samurai, that protected his country. Don't care. Karen figured Garasso realized he was losing and was mumbling to confuse her, and did not let her guard down. Garasso had been completely pushed back, and his katana was broken. Anyone could see Karen had won, but she could not shake off the feeling that something was not right. So if my home, my ancestors' country was still around, I wouldn't just be Garasso, I'd be Garasso Kataoka. I'd have a family name, isn't that incredible? Said Garasso as he undressed from the waist up. At that moment, an intense feeling of dread ran down Karen's spine. It was not fear of the unknown. She knew what it was. She would never forget how she was almost killed by that. Shara. Karen slashed at him from the shoulder down. Too late. Or am I too late? I should have put this on before it came to this. Suddenly, Garasso's arm was covered with black gauntlet, and undressing his upper body revealed a shining white jewel between his heart and stomach. This is White Masks. Yes, I am the next White Mask. When it looked like their country was about to collapse, my ancestor made a contract with someone important in the evil god side. Give me strength, and my descendants will be loyal for 7 generations. I'm the last generation, so I had to live like a ruffian whether I like it or not. But that's enough. People always complain that I ramble too much. As he spoke, the black armor covered his body. Once I put this on, I'm a slave till I die, and I can't even die by my own hand. Ah. I wanted to play a little more. A sword appeared out of nowhere, and a sleek white helmet covered his head. This again. Give me a break. Said Tiana, and her fellow party members present all felt the same way. Garasso looked exactly like the White Mask they fought before. I pity you. Then how about you give up? Tiana furiously answered Garasso's sarcasm. Sorry, but this isn't something we can solve by talking. I agree. Stop trying to confuse them with your talking. What? Butterfly sword, swallowtail longsword. A woman suddenly attacked him. Her beautiful curvilinear movements fascinated even Karen with its polish. Ah. Alice. You have a sacred garment. Ah. I should have taken Nick and ran. Said Alice of the Order of the Sun with a sarcastic smile. Her attack had left Garasso with a deep slash from the shoulder all the way to his midsection, but it closed itself as it let out smoke. The black armor then covered the hole as if it were alive. A visit from the Order of the Sun? Sounds like bad news, said Garaso with an amused tone, not sounding at all threatened. You probably have more people with you, but they couldn't keep up, right? Let's just get started, said Garaso, but Alice seemed to be in no mood to respond to his jabs, and quietly held up her sword, with cold sweat running down her face. Tiana grinded her teeth out of frustration for not being able to do anything. There was no point in firing her magic bow, as she would be hit before completing the 2 steps, aiming and firing. She could even be taken as a hostage and get in the way. Tiana's calculations were correct, and that was why she stood still. Sem. Is my master all right? I did what I could. The rest. Sem whispered. All he could offer was a vague response. Basically, nothing could be done unless they escaped this situation. She wanted to either blow away this cruel reality by charging at the enemy in front of her or leaving everything and running, but she managed to clear her head of those sweet temptations. Tiana started thinking as hard as she could. There had to be something else she could do. Tiana. Shoo. Tiana got close to Bellocchio without drawing Garaso's attention, and stopped him from speaking loudly. Master, don't talk. The boss is dead, so the barrier will be relaxed for a short time. In order to bring the boss back again, the labyrinth. It is only for a short time, but if you do it now. Bellocchio's words continued, and Tiana focused as hard as she could to hear everything. For 1 second. Just for 1 second. You can stop. The sacred garment. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 143, White Mask Returns, Part 2. Tiana heard Bellocchio until the end. It was hard for her to believe his plan. She could not help but question if such a thing was even possible. However, she had no time to waver. Tiana made up her mind and looked at the battlefield, where Alice and Karen fought. Shah! Karen unleashed an attack carried by pure physical power. The way she shook off the fear of a deathly attack sent a shiver down Tiana's spine. She wondered how Karen could fight on with no hesitation when the previous White Mask took her out with 1 attack. Alice from the Order of the Sun attacked at strategic points to keep White Mask in check, but that should not be enough to make facing White Mask any less scary. Tiana thought Karen was incredible. Now is not the time to stand here and think about that. Tiana was vexed by her own powerlessness. There was nothing she could do. If she moved carelessly, rather than creating an opening, she would probably be rebuffed and put Sem and Bellocchio in danger as well. So she waited until she saw the best possible moment. The way you handle that sword really is nice to watch. I even want to show it to my subordinates. Karen ignored Alice, as it was not the time to think of a polite reply. It would not be strange if her head flew off at any moment, but still, she swung her sword with all her might. They exchanged blows twice. Karen was in tatters, and looked as though she would collapse at any moment, but did not allow herself to do so. She was out of breath, and when her movements became duller, Alice stepped in to cover for her. Alice's sword was short and thin. Just one of many found on Thousand Sword Peak. However, her precise technique and strange pressure was able to fend off Garaso's attacks. Good. I made the right decision when I put this on. I would have been done for if I didn't. Who knows? Have some pride in your own sword skills. Your technique is great. It is dirty and cowardly, but there is something to be said about using such a dirty technique so unashamedly. You're not hiding your bloodlust very well. But as they exchanged blows, Alice's sword was deteriorating quickly. Karen had recomposed herself, and joined in again. Take this. You're annoying. It'd be easier for you if you just went down at this point. Doesn't looking at that pure and honest display of swordsmanship make you feel anything, Garaso? Or are you no longer a swordsman? said Alice mockingly to a clearly annoyed Garaso. I'm not a swordsman. Then as a follower of all martial arts. Don't you feel anything? Shut up. Garaso's sword caused an explosion. His black sword was fast, heavy, and crudely strong. Guh. A huge crater was left of the ground. With just a swing of his sword, White Mask carved a hole and sent the two women flying with a shockwave. You have a lot to learn too. Does it look like you're in a position to have a chat? A crude laugh very much unlike the featureless pure mask, it came with an echo, and a big cloud of dust covered the area. Hey! Are you alive? Asked Garaso with a dull voice. When the dust settled, he saw Alice and Karen covered in wounds. You're alive. Being stubborn is a nice quality. Stubborn? I would say nimble. Garaso on the other hand had not a single wound on his body, despite receiving so many attacks. His black armor shines more brightly, and seemed stronger than before. You're not much. Garaso's overwhelming power surpassed even Ushiwaka, but Karen did not despair. The other White Mask was faster, stronger, and more ruthless. He was the real deal. So what does that make you if you can't hang with me? Karen did not respond, instead spitting out a mixture of saliva and blood with an unpleasant expression. Where are your manners? You can't even beat me. The other one did it in a second. What? You're half-baked and awkward. I thought you were just playing, but no. You're not used to your own body and you're afraid of it. You're not even using stepping or anything when you attack. Good catch. You're like someone that sucks at riding a horse. You're so scared that you can only walk slowly. You scared good-for-nothing coward. Be careful, little Karen. An attack filled with rage descended upon Karen. She somehow managed to avoid this super heavyweight sword swing, but right after dodging, she was kicked at full force in the stomach. She was sent flying high into the sky while spitting blood. What do you know? Yes, I'm scared. I was running away from my fate and got caught. Thanks to my damn ancestor in this armor, I have to be a slave to demons for hundreds of years. But I've gone through hell. Who are you people to say anything? You're just idiots that trusted people without a second thought and got together to lick each other's wounds after getting betrayed. After he stopped yelling, Karen hit the ground with a thud. Her body twitched, and if left alone, she would surely die. Damn it, it makes me sick. I didn't even want to kill Nick. No, it's too late. My objective. I have to fulfill my objective. What's my objective? Damn, my head. Although it looked as though he would start screaming again, Garaso started lamenting in a confusing manner. He had incredible power, but his spirit was unstable. This combined with the fear in his eyes made this the perfect opportunity. A blade rotating up high chopped Garaso's arm off. Tiana loaded her magic bow silently and moved under the cover of the dust, waiting for the perfect opportunity, and the time had finally come. You! How dare! His voice twisted with rage. I'm dead. I knew this would happen, that's why I didn't want to do anything. I can't do anything now, said Tiana with a dry laugh. Garaso turned to her, thinking he had to kill her now, which meant he turned his back on Bellocchio. Nicely done, Tiana. Dungeon control, snake whip sword. Thousand Sword Peak was a very strange labyrinth, where blades grew everywhere. People could not hope to meddle with something so mysterious. Although they could pick swords and spears off the ground, that function itself was for the monsters. People could not dig swords before they popped out, or create ones that fit them personally. Only monsters could interfere with the labyrinth in this manner. However, this mechanism would become weaker for a moment, when the boss was defeated. When Bellocchio was younger, this labyrinth was his hunting ground, and after spending a lot of time experimenting, he found a secret technique. Using magic energy on the ground, he could freely control swords before they popped out as actual swords. Since this could only be used after the boss was defeated, it had little to no practical use. What use was there for a powerful technique that could only be used after the biggest threat of the labyrinth was no more? Wah! What is this? Strange chains appeared from the ground beneath Garaso as if they were plants, and began to twist their way up his body. This sharp metal was actually swords and spears connected together before they were given shape. Bellocchio recognized the delicate situation before him, and after being cut down began to slowly knead magic energy through the ground, permeating to the sword pegs. Even I am surprised about this technique being useful in this manner. Guh. Master. Don't overdo it. I cannot hold back here. Tiana caught Bellocchio before he fell, while the metal wrapped around Garaso. As Garaso's lost arm started to regenerate, the chains became stronger, as if digging into him, and eventually got inside his armor. Wah! What is this horrible technique? Oh! Garaso squirmed and yelled. Tiana felt happy as she saw what she thought were his final moments, but she was wrong. Smoke rose from the armor, and an intense heat was released from his body. Hey, are you trying to melt the metal? Just die already. I can't die even if I want to. This is... His cracked and muffled voice did not sound human anymore. The red-hot metal melted off his body and fell to the ground. The moment the drops of metal hit the ground, they caused a spark as they rapidly cooled off, leaving dull-looking clumps of metal. Just as everyone thought they played their last card, a single flash of light penetrated Garaso's body. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 144, White Mask Returns, Part 3. With the hint he got from Alice in mind, Nick imagined a street performer controlling a spinning top. When a spinning top stopped, it fell, obviously because the area actually touching the ground was too small. However, it stood straight when it spun, and was more stable the faster it spun. A skilled street performer could make it spin on top of a tobacco pipe or folding fan, or even from one end of a rope to the other. This would not be possible on a wall that stood 90 degrees in relation to the ground, but it could maintain its position on an incline that was almost vertical or had a small catch. And if something were to hit it, it would deliver a strong impact. Not moving my body on the outside, just spinning it on the inside as fast as I can. By using heavy body and light body at the same time, the parts of the body that became heavier and lighter started rotating. Nick's body started spinning on the inside without him actually moving. Oh. I see, so that's how it feels. So that's how I kicked the wall. Nick had a wild smile on his face as he realized his experiment was a success. Still, losing his balance would send him falling again. One misstep could mean death. As Alice said, the safer option would be to stay still, but Nick still chose to act. Nick closed his eyes and remembered when he was with all martial arts. Only the time he spent training there. Clear your head. This is it. He stepped forward and his body shifted 90 degrees. Although he was standing vertically on the wall, his body did not move. He carefully took another step, and instinctually realized he could not have two axes. Spinning tops don't have two axes. I need to erase the rotation on my left leg and shift it to the right. Gua. Although he noticed this, the timing was strict, and he failed. An intense gyration was transmitted through the wall, and its recoil hit Nick's body. The gyration within his own body flung him away horizontally. Gua. Ah, that was close. He grabbed onto a branch that just happened to be growing there, and escaped death. Shifting between both legs at the same time. No, I failed because I was doing it slowly. It's better if I do it rhythmically while jogging. Nick mumbled, and a chill ran down his spine. Casually jogging up a cliff as one did while running for fun. I'm not a gecko or a frog, damn it. Success was right in front of him, and that was what frightened him. When death was almost a guarantee, he could do it without thinking, but now his chances of success drastically increased. Learning how to walk on the wall decreased his chances of dying to 50%. If he died now after making it this far, it would be a foolish death. Maybe I should hold out a little longer. The situation made him want to cry. After vomiting, his stomach was empty, and his stamina was close to being drained as well. Still, he stepped forward again. Nick did not know it at this point, but this was the true application of the stepping technique. Not moving a centimeter but creating a gyration within one's body that provided defense against attacks from all directions without the user needing to dodge. Gyro movement. After finally making it out of the cliff, Nick laid flat on the ground. Nick. Hey Nick. Are you alive? Bond ran towards him on the verge of tears, with Suisun right behind him. Hey. You're alright, aren't you? I thought I was done for. What about you? How's everyone? Asked Nick without getting up. They are alive, but the situation has taken a turn for the worse. I have to go back. Do not overexert yourself. It seems to me you cannot move a single finger. Quiet. Nick objected, but Bond was right. His words carried little weight when he lay sprawled on the ground and his limbs were completely still. Tell me more. Karen is fighting. She's probably alright. Yes. He was using a very questionable technique, but Karen and Tiana should be able to handle it. Nick was relieved to hear what Suisun had to say, but Bond's expression was gloomier. Hn. What is it? I felt the same energy that comes from a sacred garment. Sacred. Gua. Nick's shock made him try to get up, but the pain running throughout his body like electricity quickly made him collapse again. Don't overdo it, you idiot. Sacred garment. Like White Mask? Is he alive? Surely it is not the same person. That sacred garment was made a long, long time ago, but it was a mass-produced item. Are you saying it's Garasso? Most likely. Why? How should I know? That's not something someone that broke can buy. Aga. Careful, Nick. Surely you are having trouble even speaking. Bond's voice was strangely quiet. He seemed to be really worried. Don't worry, I'm fine. I have good news too. Alice from the Order of the Sun went there to help. And she's the one that saved me in the first place. Do you think one person will make a difference? We are talking about the same sacred garment White Mask wore. I don't know. Let's just go back. Lend me your shoulder. Nick said to Suisun, who instead quietly picked him up. Hey. We're not getting anywhere if we rely on your strength. Just to make sure, do you really want to go back? It's your last chance to abandon the fight by going down the mountain. I can't leave now. You'll die. Suisun said quietly, not in a threatening manner, but simply stating the truth. Yes, this time it really looks like it's going to be tough. Then. But I'm still going, you go back. You have a kid, right? I'll bring Karen back. Nick blandly mumbled, and Suisun's face became red. That's not what I meant. I'm not trying to be malicious either, it's just that I'm the leader of the party, and I have a responsibility towards them. We just have different roles. What are you saying when you're in this state? Alright then. Suisun let out a sigh of resignation and gently put Nick down. Hn. Aren't we going? And do what, when you can't even walk properly? We need to formulate a plan first. Said Suisun as she took out a blue jewel from her pocket. It had a thin chain to make it so it could hang from one's neck, but no other ornaments. Its design was simple, almost as if insinuating that anything else would look boorish compared to its beauty. What is that? Something called a Dragon King orb that I intended to give to my daughter. Dragon King orb. Nick thought he heard the name before, and quickly remembered where. Isn't that the thing that was stolen from Karen? Yes, but this isn't the one she's looking for. My foster father infused hers with power, but I have been infusing this one with magic energy for my daughter. A Dragon King orb is not a specific jewel, it's a talisman passed on from parent to child. It can also be used as a magic item carrying magic energy. Used as a magic item with magic energy. Nick repeated Suesen's words as if to confirm them. If you're bringing it out now. Is it safe to assume you want me to use it? It's not like I want to, but it can't be helped at this stage. How do I use it? Whisper an incantation and swallow it. Swallow a jewel. Hey. There's no other option. It will disappear as the magic energy spreads throughout your body, so it won't destroy your stomach or anything. I see. This is just in case of an emergency though. I'd rather not have to use it. It puts a lot of stress on the body, so I don't know what will happen if someone is hurt as you swallows it. Got it. Let's go back. Maybe they've defeated him already. That would be great. Said Suesen as she once again picked Nick up. Be gentler. So sensitive. You're going to bite your tongue. Obviously, things were not going as well as Nick had hoped. Once they got close enough to see the battle, what they saw was Karen trying to persevere while covered in wounds and being supported by Alice. Garasso moved with composure, and it was clear to him that everyone would die before long. Suesen reflexively tried to join the battle, but was stopped by Nick and Bond. Calm down. We all want to jump in, but we cannot do so recklessly. But. Look. Bellocchio is setting up something. They spoke quietly and from a distance. Suesen looked at Bellocchio after being prompted by Bond. It's too far to tell. It looks like some sort of spell. Do you have any idea what it is? We can't even use regular magic. Suesen remembered something. I know. He said something about it before we came here. There's something he can only use after the boss has been defeated. Will it be enough? That I don't know. But I can't imagine Mr. Bellocchio would do it for no reason. Suesen clenched her teeth out of irritation. She could not stand to look at Karen, but she knew moving at this time would only invite danger. We will wait for the right time and turn it around in 1 second. He is only playing now, but if we leap out and strike at him, we might just make him serious and wipe out everyone. By the way, Suesen. What? Does that Dragon King orb give other people the magic energy of dragon people? Yes, that's right. If we share the same general concept, we should be compatible. I will use it. Bond took the Dragon King orb out of Suesen's hands and swallowed it without hesitation. What are you? Why you idiot. Bond quietly accepted Suesen and Nick's deadly glares. Listen. Swallowing the orb made me familiar with Suesen's magic energy. Do you know what this means? No, but why did you do that? For just a short time, you two can use union. What? When Bellocchio does whatever he is doing, we will use union to hit Garasso with all we have. This is our only chance. The light of hope lit up in Nick's eyes, but he shook his head. No. Even if we use union, we have to get used to it. There's no way we can use our full power all of a sudden. And you said we only have a short amount of time, right? About 5 seconds. F5. Nick looked depressed, and peeked at Suesen. Is union what you used to combine with Karen? Yes, but we don't know how it will turn out after we use it. Like what we can and can't do. Then we should decide what we will do beforehand, especially if what we can do is limited. Jump at him with all we have and slash him, or... Bond completed her sentence. Snipe him. That is all we can do. Nick and Suesen gulped. They would have 5 seconds to perform something they had never done before. Let's go with that throwing spear Suisen. If we both think about it while using Union, we should turn into something fit for it. Really? Probably. It's worth trying. Nick looked at Karen, fighting fiercely. This prompted Suisen to do the same, making her grind her teeth with frustration. This is all we can do. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 145, White Mask Returns, Part 4. Danger approached even as Nick and the others spoke in secret. Garasso was enraged by Karen's provocation and stopped holding back. He kicked her hard enough to send her flying through the air, and Suisen lost her mind, thinking her sister was dead. Nick was also on the verge of losing it, when Bond took their hands and held them together. Direct that anger towards your opponent. It is time. That man is not getting out alive. Of course. Their anger and the power of the Dragon King orb made it possible for Nick and Suisen to use Union despite their lack of a deep bond. Goo. A blue-haired dragon person with a virile face appeared. This person was clad in white shining armor, much like how when Karen and Nick used Union, and was covered with sharp scales from the elbow down. However, the scales were deep blue, just like Suisen's. Do not waste time. Finish it in one strike. I know. But the biggest difference was the shape of the sword of Bond's. It now looked more like a large spear than a sword. The blade itself was smaller than usual, but its handle was large. Nick/Suisen held it and stretched their left hand forward to aim, as they gripped the spear tight and pulled back. Their target was Garasso, where they focused all of their strength and anger to thoroughly kill this vile being. Their pure killing intent resembled a prayer, which brought a focus to their mind that seemed to slow down time. In the blink of an eye, they focused all their strength, and felt as though they could hit their target even if it stood hundreds of kilometers away. And then, the spear pierced Garasso right through his core. It was finally over. Garasso's sacred garment laid half broken, and showed no signs of regenerating. 3/3 of his mask had fallen off, revealing his worn-out face and unshaved stubble. But above all else, the hole the size of a fist at the center of his body showed he was done. The core is destroyed and there is no chance it will self-destruct. The life support function should cease to function in a few minutes, and he will truly die then. Said Bond, briefly and frankly. These words were said so coldly and matter-of-factly that it left no room for suspicion. It made Garasso let out a small sarcastic laugh. You heard him. Do you have any last words? There was a heavy tone in Nick's voice. Union had already been undone. In fact, it was undone the moment they threw the sword of Bond's. Their stamina had been completely sapped. Suisen lost consciousness, and Nick was only standing by sheer force of will and stubbornness. He would not be doing anything close to fighting. What's with that face? You idiot. I just killed a member of my old party. Am I supposed to feel good? I killed one of yours too. Didn't I? No one died. Karen's alive. Karen was receiving treatment. Sem used healing magic, and Alice was preparing bandages and medicine. Bellocchio also fainted after overexerting himself with his magic, but his life was not in danger. It was a complete victory for Nick and the others. Just how tough is she? Looks like I'm retiring from being an assassin. Why? Why what? Why did you put on that stupid dress? It's cool, isn't it? It's a load of crap and it doesn't suit you. Why the smooth mask? Forget it. Why didn't you talk to Argus? There's more to this than you're letting on, isn't there? Garasso was quiet. It was not a silence of awkwardness or guilt. Garasso had pity in his eyes. Ah. That's right, you didn't know. Know what? I didn't just become an assassin the other day. I was one already from the start. What? Argus picked me up because he thought I'd make a good assassin. We've pretty much been on holiday for all these years. No, it's more like we tried to go straight and failed. Every one of us is like this except you, that includes Argus. Stop lying. I'm not lying. I got this armor because the ones worshipping the evil god are regular customers. Well, in my case, there's also my ancestors' debt. That played a big part in getting me to wear this too. Nick was too shocked for words. He tried to put his hands on Garasso's neck, but his exhaustion made him miss completely and dropped to one knee. Garasso laughed at this, before starting to cough. Ah, it hurts. You really never noticed, You're an adventurer fighting monsters, so why are you so good at using a short sword and fighting hand to hand? Didn't you ever ask why? That's because of my stature. Because it fits your body. I guess that's true. Everyone has things they're good at and not. So why's a big strong guy like Argus training so hard to be as good as possible at grappling? Because that's his style. And why's that his style? It's not to kill monsters with his bare hands, it's to kill people. Nick glared at Garasso, but he was at death's door, and looked indifferent. Even Nick did not think Garasso was lying at this point. Listen. Don't try to talk to Argus ever again. If you see him, run as fast as you can. This is what we all are. That's all I have to say. I don't get it. Get it through your thick head already. All martial arts are a bunch of criminals. Nick smacked his lips and glared at Garasso, but asked no further questions. He was unable to process this information. What else? What else what? Do you have anything to tell some woman or something? I'm done with women. And booze too. They will just keep getting me in debt. You should have noticed that sooner. Shut up. Ah, I remembered a couple of things. What? Did you learn stepping? Yes. That's an essential part of all martial arts middle den. Argus isn't here so I'll say it instead. You passed. Middle den was a rank of all martial arts. It was composed of first den, middle den, and hidden den. Nick had previously received the first den from Gaius. Who cares? I was expelled. Yeah, you're a dropout. Ah, that's right. It was because of me. Yes, it was your fault. What's the other thing? Garasso exhaled in an exaggerated manner, as though he was smoking. Nick contained his annoyance and waited, knowing these would probably be his last words. I was the one who stole money from our wallet that time. My bad. Say that sooner too, you idiot. Nick responded with anger at something he was not expecting to hear. It was convenient for Argus to drive you out. But you went ahead and got yourself a sacred sword and made yourself a target. That was a huge miscalculation. I guess. That's how it is. Garasso's words seemed strangely elongated. His strength was gone, like a spring-operated doll stopping. Hey Garasso. Nick. Nick tried to grab Garasso, but was stopped by Bond. All that was left was a corpse with vacant eyes. Adventurers who don't believe in humanity will save the world, Chapter 146, Pioneers. Everyone was covered in wounds. Even just climbing down the mountain safely was difficult, but thankfully Alice's subordinates finally caught up. First aid treatment was given to the wounded, the ones who could not walk were carried out on stretchers, and the one casualty was placed in a body bag. They then made their way back to terrain. Karen, Bellocchio, and Nick were carried out on stretchers, Wilma and her subordinates as well. All had cuts on their backs, clearly Garasso's handiwork. No one's life is in danger. I see. Thanks, I owe you one. Yes, it would have been difficult to even make it back in this conditions. Nick and the others were brought to a hospital specific for adventurers located next to the Adventurer Guild fishermen. Since they always had doctors and sorcerers that specialized in external wounds, poison, and burns and frostbite caused by magic, it was decided this was the best place to take them. The staff was shocked to see Wilma being brought in half dead, and hurried to treat her. Nick was covered with scratches and his stamina was depleted, but he did not suffer as much damage as Karen and the others, so his treatment did not take long. He laid on a bed, and when he woke up 2 or 3 hours later, he saw Bond and Alice by his side. "Leave the rest to the staff here. Make sure to rest well." Tiana and Sem fell asleep too. "There's somewhere I have to go." "I'll thank you later." "Bond, stay with Tiana and Sem." Nick slipped past Alice like a cat and left the room. Alice and Bond hurried to go after him. "Hoa! Where do you think you are going?" "Why yes. Where are you going in that state?" But Nick completely ignored them and continued on. There were always fiacres waiting outside the hospital, and Nick called out to one of the drivers. "Hey driver! Let me in." "Yes." "Yua. Are you alright, sir? Are you running away from the hospital?" Nick had wounds all over his body. He had his armor removed, inner clothing replaced, and received first aid, but his wounds were still visible. "Take me to the pioneers." "Don't worry, I'll pay." "That's not what I'm worried about." "Don't worry, just go." Nick talked down the driver, who obliged with a displeased expression. This year's monsters' pre-hibernation meal was weird. There were more named monsters than normal. "Is this an omen?" listlessly mumbled a black-haired beautiful woman, with her chin resting on her hands. "HN." Another beautiful woman sitting across who looked just like her nodded. "I'm going to get rusty here on standby. Cutting down evil spirits isn't bad, but blades are meant to cut meat. Being on standby is important too. Pioneers doesn't have a lot of people." "Ah. When are some lively youngsters going to get promoted?" she said with a sigh. Her movements, and even the lips sighing, were alluring and lascivious. Her pure black cassock should bring about an air of chastity and nobility, but it was strangely charming when she wore it. However, no one in Pioneers would be charmed. Her name was Kijui, and she was the ace of the C-rank party, Ghost Hunt. All members of this party were priests of the god of balance Virginie, the most militaristic of the 4 sects in this country. They valued order and peace, and their mission was to help those attacked by monsters or robbers. Because of this, training in the military arts and tempering their bodies was essential, and they were well connected with chivalric orders and adventurer guilds. Kijui and the rest of her party got together as adventurers for the sake of these relations and personnel exchange. However, no one in this guild believed this. Everyone figured they were too extreme even for the Virginie sect, and were relegated to the adventurer guild. "Sister. What Tansui?" The woman named Tansui was Kijui's twin. The way their hair was parted and their katanas were different, and while Kijui had an alluring presence, Tansui could be better described as having a sleepy posture. Everything else was exactly the same. "Don't you miss Nick?" "I don't. The air feels fresher without that cocky kid around." Kijui answered Tansui with clear irritation. How pathetic to be kicked out of a party for something so stupid. "We could have hired him if he came here with his head lowered and asked, but he hasn't shown up yet. A stray dog like him should at least be a little cuter." Kijui had a bad habit. When she saw a new adventurer or one she liked to slash at them to see what they could do. She would often pick fights with new adventurers in Pioneers, and people around her would not do much to stop her. Although Ghost Hunt was a C-rank party, Kijui could hold her own against A-rank adventurers. Not only would it be hard to stop her, but she also held back in her own way, so no one was ever seriously hurt. Guild employees also turned a blind eye on this, since it served as a rite of passage for adventurers that were feeling overly confident after having their rank rise enough to join Pioneers. Kijui took advantage of this to chase around an adventurer she was interested in with her katana. An adventurer that was not even a newcomer, Nick. She was entranced by the way he was limber enough to move like a cat, even though he was a man. Nick lamented his slender body and lack of muscles, but this tickled Kijui's sadism. He had all the muscles he needed while having very little fat. His joints were flexible and his torso strong. His body balance was almost artistic. It was beautiful, like a ballerina, something even women could not easily achieve. When Kijui attacked him, it went beyond simple rough play and became a courting action. Obviously, only Kijui herself saw it as that. To the person being attacked, she was nothing more than a lunatic slashing at him in broad daylight. Humph. What is it, Tansui? He'll probably be here soon. Will he? I heard from an acquaintance over in Fisherman that he will be promoted again. Tansui. Explain things a little more clearly. Although Kijui complained about her sister's lack of clarity, she more or less understood what she meant. She complained because this was generally something that complicated things, and also because she wanted to hear the good news in a more direct manner. However, this explanation did not come, as it was interrupted by the arrival of the man himself. With a big thud, the door was opened. Excuse me. He tossed a silver coin to the driver, and opened the door to Pioneers as if he was kicking it down. Nick. Most people present were taken aback. They gasped at his bloodlust, and the way he looked like a rabid dog. Only one person welcomed him, Kijui, whose voice emanated joy. She slowly unsheathed her katana without a sound, and released a flash of light. Tansui saw this, but was too late, and Nick and Kijui were already too close. I don't know how, but you got promoted, right? Not bad. You're not getting rusty, Kijui spoke as though she was having a friendly chat while attacking Nick. Sorry, I don't have time to play. Usually, Nick would jump back and throw the cup sitting on a nearby table before running away. Tansui would then hold Kijui back while the rest of all martial arts got involved. This was a common occurrence when Nick used to visit Pioneers. Oh. But Nick did not have friends here to stop this anymore. The katana user that would say things like, "What's wrong with being popular with girls?" and, "If you hurt him you better take responsibility," while grinning, was not in this world anymore. Nick had just killed him just a few hours before. Come on, just play a little. Nick dodged the blade, approached Kijui, and lightly hit her chin with a spear hand. Tansui sounded surprised. Sister. Nick used the same rotation on his hand he used when he ran up the wall. The impact of this rotation traveled through Kijui's chin and shook her brain like a pendulum. Kijui lost consciousness in a second and was about to fall, but was caught by Tansui. Several people in Pioneers knew the past Nick, but the Nick they knew was nowhere near strong enough to defeat someone as strong as Kijui, as though she was a child. The place fell silent, as everyone was in shock. Where's Argus? Nick asked a receptionist as he walked towards a counter. Didn't you hear me? I asked. Where's Argus of all martial arts? Didn't you hear Nick? Nick looked as though he was about to kill someone, which frightened the employee, answering his question with another question. Hear what? I said where's? Yesterday, we were notified that all martial arts was disbanded. What? It actually causes problems for us too, because the order came here asking what happened. Argus didn't say why or where he was going. The question in Nick's mind was the answer. What Garasso said before he died was true. Argus picked me up because he thought I'd make a good assassin. We've pretty much been on holiday for all these years. Every one of us is like this except you, including Argus. I got this armor because the ones worshipping the evil god are regular customers. This confirmation sapped the strength from Nick's body. Nick's focus was being held together by determination and will alone, and it broke. Hey! Nick was wide open for an attack, and a solid chop hit his neck. Gah! Excuse me, I'm just here to get this back. As Nick's consciousness faded, the last thing he saw was Alice's face, who finally caught up with him.